So, Psikyo Collection Volume 3 is starting to arrive in people's hands now, and I thought that would be a great time to take a little look at the various collections we have, and of course the games they contain. Partly because I haven't had enough time to spend with the games from the third collection, this video isn't going to be a review of anything as such, although I will offer some opinions on the games. It's more of a retrospective of what you can expect to find on each collection. Now, each collection has 4 games, giving us 12 in total, which when you think about it, is kind of incredible. In my opinion, more than half of these are of world-class quality, and the main reason you should be picking these up is not for the collecting aspect, but for the sheer brilliance of the games on offer. The 3 collections follow a kind of chronological order, so let's start with Collection 1. On here we have Samurai Warriors, Strikers 1945, Gunbird, and Soul Divide. There's a gallery, mostly of character or ship designs, and the 4 games themselves. All the games on all the collections are essentially just straight ports. No online leaderboards, none of the bells and whistles of, for example, an M2 release. Now first let's get arguably the weakest game from all 3 collections out the way first. Soul Divide. This one is a hori with a larger than usual focus on close range attacks. It used similar capture techniques to those from the original Mortal Kombat and has aged very badly visually. Although I do wonder if anyone thought this looked good even at the time. It's a confusing game both to play and to look at, with a magic system and convoluted story. I haven't played it much to be honest, but it's on Collection 1, so there you go. Moving on, we'll take a look at Gunbird. Now, I'm going to go into a little more detail with this one than any of the others because it can serve as a model for basically all the other verts. Gunbird wasn't Psikyo's first offering in this category, but for me it's the closest to a kind of archetype, and we can define the others by how far and in what ways they deviate from the original Gunbird. So in Gunbird we have 7 stages. The first 3 are randomised from a pool of 4. You have a standard shot which can be auto-fired and a bomb. You also have a charge shot which can be used as often as you like. Each stage finishes with a boss, usually of 2 stages, and often with multiple parts that can be blown off before finishing the whole thing for extra points. For example, destroying the wings of a boss before its main body. There are also coins hidden beneath certain enemies and environmental structures. Here all are of the same value. You have 5 characters, and each both plays differently, as well as having their own little story which culminates in individual ending scenes where you have a choice of 2 options to follow for each character, many of which end up comedic in nature. Characters will also interact in the 2-player mode, giving a lot of variation and providing great replay value. In-game, bullets move quickly, although there are a range of difficulties, and quickly start coming in wide spreads, but never quite enter the bullet hell sort of range. This is very much still classic shmup territory. One hit from a bullet and not only are you dead, your shot returns to pea shooter level and any extra unused bombs you'd stocked up on disappear. Touching enemies, however, only reduces your shot power 1 step. Shot power pickups, by the way, drop from fallen enemies, as do bombs, and stay with you until you get hit, at which point they drop to 0. That is, except for the highest power level, this will drop 1 step after a set amount of time and require another pickup to get back. If you pick up a shot power pickup while fully powered, however, you will maintain your level while also receiving a hefty points bonus, in this case 10 times that of a gold coin. This is the basic setup for many of the games on these collections, although most of them have their own little spins and improvements or alterations. Specifically regarding Gunbird, we have a quasi-medieval setting and a lot of charm with the 5 varied characters and team of bad guys led by the, at the time uncontroversially monikered, Trump, out to stop them. I absolutely love the little background elements in this game, with lots of movement and Trump and her henchmen frequently visible as they scurry about between their machines. Gunbird is a lot of fun to play both for survival and for scoring, although unfortunately all scores are crammed into one leaderboard whatever condition they were achieved under. In the settings you can choose how many lives and continues you have, as well as the extend score. There are also some visual options with screen filters, the option to remove the wallpaper, and importantly of all, that vital tatty mode support. Gunbird is without a doubt my favourite game on Collection 1, and don't worry, we won't go into as much depth with any of the others. Speaking of which, next we will look at Strikers 1945. This is basically Gunbird in a World War II-ish setting with some robots. It lacks the character of Gunbird, with no real story and your ships just being ships. The stages are also less interesting visually and have more muted colours. One change is the value of the gold bars you pick up changes here depending on your timing. I also find the ship movement in this one to be slightly more sluggish than Gunbird. It's still a great title, but maybe not in the absolute top tier. Same goes for the last game on this collection, or first, depending how you look at it, Samurai or Sengoku Aces. This was Psikyo's first foray into vert territory, although the team did have experience elsewhere, and it shows. This one just lacks the polish of the later releases. The Samurai era setting is cool, with some nice visual touches like the giant Daruma, but overall it's a little plain with lots of brown. It's also very difficult even on the lower difficulty settings, often feeling unfairly so with unsignaled attacks coming from very close range. It's in no way a bad game, but after playing the later titles, it's clear what this one lacks. So to sum up, Collection 1 has 3 verts, one of which is in many ways the archetypal Psikyo game, one of which is their actual, slightly unrefined original effort, and one of which is kind of between the two. There's also Soul Divide, which, yeah. Now, where to start with Collection 2? This one is just wall-to-wall quality. 3 of the games are sequels to ones from Collection 1, 2 of them remaining very similar to the format of their predecessors. So let's start with them. Strikers 1945-2 is just a better version of Strikers 1945. The movement is more fluid and the stage is a bit more memorable. It's also added a power meter for your charge shot. This has 3 levels with your charge shot approaching bomb levels of destructive capability if you manage to get it all the way up to the top. This was a great addition to the classic formula and one that crops up again in the next game on here. Gunbird 2. Here, Marion is the only returning character, although there are some other connections, with Tavia being the daughter of the professor from Gunbird 1, and Ainet from Samurai Aces showing up as a secret character. We have the power-up meter from Strikers 2 here, although in a further addition you have 2 special shots. One is activated with a button tap and is usually both powerful but only good for close range attacks, and uses 1 unit from your power gauge whatever level it's at. The other works as a more standard charge shot, increasing in power just like the ones in Strikers 2. Coins also again offer a range of points depending when they're picked up, and there are secret hidden masks which are invisible until hit, and when found will drop streams of high value gems. Gunbird 2 is, like the first iteration, packed with character and amusement as you face off against a new team of bad guys and their once again rather busty leader. Speaking of which, Morrigan was an extra character in this game, but she has sadly remained on the Dreamcast version only. Visually, Gunbird 2 displays a real jump in quality for Psikyo. While the backgrounds in Gunbird 1 were charming, the ones here are really beautiful and filled with detail and variety. Enemy design and bosses too are inspired creations, and if I had to choose a favourite Psikyo game, it would probably be this one. Our third game is another vert and has no relation on Collection 1. Dragon Blaze is probably the most different of all the verts, with a really unique system where you control a rider on a dragon. Your dragon, however, can be launched at enemies, leaving your character to move to other areas of the screen. This creates a wealth of tactical variety, and that's even before you consider the fact your special attacks vary depending whether you're seated on the dragon or whether it's off on its own. There's more depth to the scoring here, with enemies dropping silver coins for you to scoop up. These change to gold, however, if the enemy was killed with a dragon launch attack, and certain points, similar to the mask in Gunbird 2, will spew out reams of gold. Dragon Blaze is arguably the visual peak of the whole collection. The backdrops, while lacking the movement and amusing aspects of Gunbird 2, are exquisitely rendered, and while the flip grip is a great option for all the games on here, I find myself going back to the old TV on the side method for this one, since it just looks so damn good. It is hard, however, with this being probably the closest Psikyo ever came to bullet hell. Interestingly, the trademark orange bullets we see in almost all Psikyo games are in Dragon Blaze purpley pink. The final game on here is a Hori, and undoubtedly Psikyo's best effort in that field. Tengai is a well-renowned game, and with good reason. It's a follow-up to Samurai Aces, and again, Ainet is a secret character. It really goes all in with the traditional theme, with detailed Japanese backgrounds, enemies, and even music. There's a large emphasis on special attacks here, and which character you choose seriously affects how you approach the game. The graphics do show their age, but unlike in the case of Soul Divide, it's obvious why they were drawn this way, and no doubt at the time they would have been vastly impressive. And while they have aged, they still exude a lot of charm and give the game a really unique character. My only real complaint with this one is I've always found it hard to get a handle on quite where the hitboxes are. Your character sprite is rather large, and anytime your eyes are focused on the right of the screen, making what in other games I would consider a stupid mistake becomes frustratingly common. Still a great game though, and it rounds out a full volume of nothing but great games. If you can only get one of these collections, Volume 2 is the surefire choice. So on to Volume 3. And if Volume 2 was a set of 4 top quality but not dissimilar titles, Volume 3 is a far more mixed bag in terms of both variety and quality. First thing you're going to notice when starting up Volume 3 is there's no central menu with a gallery for this one. Instead, it loads its 4 game icons directly onto your home screen. No big issue, but the inconsistency is a little odd. As mentioned, I haven't had as much time with these, so this part is going to focus more on simply explaining what these games are. First up, we have arguably the main event, Strikers 1945-3, sometimes known as Strikers 1999. This is significant for being the first console release of this game, but while it may be exciting for that reason, it is, at the end of the day, just another Strikers game. It looks good and has all the additions we've got used to, and I felt it was a little more difficult with a slower ship, but if you've played Strikers 1945-2, there's not much new here. Still great to have on this collection, and while it may not reinvent the wheel, it's still an excellent game. Where we do have something really new is the next game, Zero Gunner. This is a fantastic game with a very interesting control scheme where you take charge of a helicopter, and by rotating around a point you can fix on screen with a button press, you can fire in any direction and the enemies will come at you from all sides. The bosses here take Psikyo's classic shape-shifting style to a new level, often switching settings as they transform. The game looks really good, mostly, and it's on the easier side, so it's a perfect one to get started with. I actually bought the digital version of this a long time ago and may well do a full video on it in the future because I really love it. Our next game I can't quite say the same for. Sengoku Cannon was made by Psikyo staff, but it is a very different beast from its excellent predecessors. It's a side-scroller, but instead of beautiful hand-drawn backgrounds, we have mostly hideous, often plain, and sometimes literally empty spaces which you move through in nausea-inducingly lurchy 3D movements. The gameplay isn't as good as previous titles either, but there is full Japanese voice acting, which may explain where the budget went, and more detail to its story. Honestly, this one is only really notable as a curiosity and is something of a sad coda to the Psikyo story. The last game on here, Gunbird, has been described as a shmup version of Breakout, and that description is pretty fitting. It features Marion from Gunbird and is cute, colourful and quite addictive. You flip a ball around Breakout style stages, dodge or block shots from enemies, and every third stage take on a boss. It has a vibrant, almost kids building block style, and while it's not really a shmup, it can be quite fun, and for me, came as a pleasant surprise. So as you can see, Collection 3 is a bit of an odd one. It's kind of a collection of odds and ends, with some superb quality in the form of Zero Gunner, another solid 1945 game, and a quirky little not quite shmup. Sengoku Cannon is notably weaker than the others, but I still preferred it to Soul Divide. Its backgrounds may be ugly, but at least I knew what the hell I was doing. So there you have it, all 3 collections, and when looked at as a whole, it's a real treasure trove of mostly first-rate arcade shmups. If you can, I strongly recommend picking up all 3, but if you only want or can only get one of them, Collection 2 is a very obvious choice. Before I go, a quick word on these editions. These are the Asia-Korean editions with 4 games per collection. There is a limited edition of Volume 3, which comes with a box for all 3 game cases, an art book, and the now infamous Koryori Boob mousepad. There's also going to be a Japanese edition of all these games put on just 2 cartridges, so 6 on each. These will be arranged by series, all the Strikers, all the Sengoku games together for example, and if you already have one of these Asia-Korea releases, you're probably best sticking with that region for the others. The Japanese releases I feel will probably only be of interest to collectors. So that's all from me. These really do offer an astonishing collection, and I hope if you pick them up, you'll enjoy them as much as I have. As ever, thanks for watching, and I hope to see you next time. Cheers.